Yo, what's up guys, Seiishizo over here, and people have been asking for more Siege videos, so you ask, you shall receive. More Sieges. It's definitely noticeable that Sonya is a little bit more difficult to place in right now. There's a lot of revive units, such as a Terranese in there. There's a lot of Talisha or Tanisha, whatever, like the Fire Jennifer is called. That thing is kind of disabling a bunch of Sonya comps as well, so I think I'm not using a single Sonya in 2 sieges. This is split out for 2 sieges. Otherwise, my video would simply be too short. First siege was versus Smash Brothers and versus Havoc. This is one of those teams that you do tend to see a lot. And Sonya, one of those, is not really recommended. Like, you could Sonya the Byungchul, but then what else can you kill with anything else? Like, you kind of have to go for 2 snipe units. It's definitely an option. But I have seen some of that top left unit on a Swift set as well. And then are you fast enough? Because it does have a 21 lead. So there's just a few things like that that might actually make it kind of difficult. But because of that, also, a lot of my Tiana comps are very viable. So I'm definitely using a lot of my Tianas, but I only have 3. So at some point I do run out. And especially towards the end, I had to go for more creative offenses. Moving on to the next, this one is a little bit faster. So in this case, since there's a TL Lang, you don't want to start off with a skill 2. Also, a lot of resistance over there. Like, I have no clue where all of those resistance came from. Maybe it was not actually stripping, but just trying to land a debuff, and those show up as resistance if the immunity is still there. Could definitely be a thing. But in the end, this team in general sense is really strong. I also rune all of them at like 195 speed and that kind of stuff. So it's pretty hard to get outsped on this. And yeah, if you can just make like 3 195 sets for this kind of team, it's very beneficial and it's super freaking strong, especially with the hacker buff. It reminded me of the Feng Yang buff. Feng Yang absolutely did not need a buff. Let's give it a buff. This hit is pretty interesting, pretty nice. It's very LD heavy on the other side, but there's one big issue that it's kind of killing itself. And it's really bad into Seimei. That is the main thing. So I was at first like, oh, am I gonna do this with like a Leo as the only damage source because they don't have any damage? And then I was like, nah, I'm pretty sure they will never do any damage. Safer way to actually do this is just use only the Leo for damage and then put in the Alaya in the middle or Riley in the middle. And then I would have 100% never died and it would have cleared it at some point because, well, the Light Parlor Queen just pretty much takes HP every time she does the Brutal Order, which is the 3rd skill. And yeah, that just doesn't really help you out in this kind of sense, shape, or way. Interesting defense? Yeah. Is it really good for that reason? No, not really. I did actually take a few victories because I think if you make this pretty fast and you don't have a proper counter into it, then it could be pretty dangerous, especially with a Moor. Moor can do a lot of damage. Like if you tend to go for like, let's say a Juno for the strips and like those kind of things, could be dangerous, but in the end worked out. Next hit is also one of those hits that you cannot really Sonya at all. Well, you can kind of Sonya this, but it's just not really recommended. I have seen it before where you see the Platy super fast and therefore it can go for skill 3 right away. If you're not immunity, you could be screwed. But also the Irene super fast. If the Irene right away goes for skill 3, it could put something in the back and therefore it's kind of good in the first place. It's also somewhat of a counter into a Leo, Feng Yang, and Alaya, but in this case, not a counter to this Tian. Then a team that I like to bring in the Hey Gang. I was a little bit scared of this team being pretty darn fast, and in this case, it actually was. But the Gojo decided to be a very bad Gojo over there, and then it's just pretty much a free win from there. Like, that's all I can say. But yeah, I should have actually went for upping my units a little bit faster. I should have actually, rather than going for 100 resistance, I should have went for the set that I normally go for, the Tomoe with Hacker and Amber team. Because with that team, I'm all like 190-ish speed. And in that case, I don't think he would have probably cut, but might have still had a cut in there. But then again, it's also the thing, like if one unit is not stripped, if the, if the Rika's not stripped by RNG or not stunned, which like you need like 6 out of 6 RNGs to actually properly land, and one of them is probably gonna fail in like a 15% check. But if the Hey Gang is not stunned or, if the gun is not stripped or stunned, you can get glancing. If it's the case for the Rika, you can get stunned, slowed, and you deal damage. And if it's the case for the Lewis, I can get shields up. So in either kind of shape or way, it would have been pretty nice. Also using the Dark Tanjiro to get the irresistible buff over there, so we have a guaranteed pushback on this, so we don't need too much crit rate on that, can focus more on a little bit of damage. Actually a pretty tanky team, but since you have the pushback, you get a second rotation in on all of them, and then you just kill. And how can we finish off a siege without Lucianing a few? I do have a Mirenae right now, but in the end, this is still a faster setup than the Mirenae, so why not? And you know what's better than one Lucian? Two Lucians! So once again, going in with a Lucian. This thing does a fair bit of damage, like a pretty decent Lucian, I would say. And then the final hit, I run up my Lucian and someone else took the hit I wanted to take, and I was like, well, fuck it, we already won, let's just Lucian it in. I actually missed all crits on the unit on the right, and I, by the sliver of health, did not kill that thing in the middle because of the amount of shield sets. So I was like, okay, well, that's also 1 HP, so 1 HP for 1 HP it is. But let's see if I can actually clear it from here, because, well, I made the mistake of not activating the passive. And if you don't activate the passive, you get hit for 51k. Yeah, that hurts. And then an additional turn, yeah, and then you're kind of done for. Like, you're not gonna win this 1v1. But in the end, if it was not a full counter against, like, a cleave team, I might have gotten away with it. But in this case, I did not. I died. It happens. 9 out of 10 on this siege. Then the next siege against Dawn Legends and Las Yegi or something like that. I guess it's the old Yegi dress. This thing can still do a lot of damage, like 92k over there. That's a lot of damage. Also, this being is a lot of damage. You can technically still Sonya this, but the big issue is that if it's heavy on the minus wind, you could lack in damage. But then again, you could do the same thing with the lack of damage on the series. That's definitely a true statement. Like, you can make this team more of a tank into this. Sure, there's a few other ways that you can clear it, but still pretty decent team out there, I would say. And of course, can't miss out on using this team. I think that this is my most consistent used team out there, maybe except for the Lucians, of course. It's just so incredibly good. It's really good against all of those kind of teams. In this case, I do always tend to go damage on the wind, just to make sure that a random Björnjo is not sitting at like 60k HP and it cannot hit 60k HP. 67k HP is kind of on the edge with the speed lead, where you're probably never going to get that kind of much HP in there. So that's why I feel comfortable, I feel fine. Minus light is not that common for these kind of units, so in that sense, it still works. On to the next good old Tiana and the Maximilian over here. Always like it when Maximilian does actually take an additional turn. In this case, Maximilian is not on crit rate or crit damage, so it's just pure by the additional damage artifacts. Otherwise, the skill 2 would do a fair bit more damage, but it's definitely one of those teams I pretty much always use. Then the variation to the Maximilian team, the Nefty's team. In this case, there was actually Swift on the top left unit, and I actually did not fully tune my unit over there, but since the glancing was there, I still had enough to go for it. Also, the Fire Trist does do a fair bit of damage. Like, it can push back, but the damage is really good. Then also a variation to their team, which is definitely pretty interesting, is this one over here with the Narsha. I think the Narsha version with this is incredibly strong. Because, well, normally you don't really want to Leo, but I was like, I just kind of want to try to Leo it in a different kind of shape or way. And in this case, I went for my Kinky that is on the build that I use in RTA, so just Violent, 100 res, and Tanky, and then just doing it from the add damage, because there's no source of recovery on their side. And I also had the Tetra on 100 res. And the Tetra was also on a Vio, but like a plus 190 speed build. So every time that I got the Oblivion on my Leo, which was also 100 res, by the way. And this actually landed on 100 res, by the way. That kind of stuff. Yep, few extra damage. That's why that hit did do pretty hard. But yeah, the 100 res, I think they're max accuracy on like everything. So that definitely did not really help out. Neither for him taking a few extra turns over here. So yeah, was this really the best team out there? Not really. Wouldn't really say it's the best team out there, but it kind of does work. So the resistance is kicking in a little bit. But actually the whole team is 100 resistance, but you cannot be resistant against additional turns. So in this case, we have 1 HP. And I was like, okay, looking by the HP on the unit on the right, if I dot it, yep, perfect range. My Leo, as mentioned, is kind of, well, it's 100 res, it's tanky. So for that reason, it did work out. Where they proc a lot, I also win in the end by a proc. Well, I would say the Leo position was more calculated. The Kinky position with the S1 into the S2 was more of a proc related, but not sure if I really needed one. What was the tricky one? Would not do that again. Then next to my Ian team, I think that this is pretty much my most used team. In this case, I still went for the S2. They are full on attack bar, so I kind of expected me not to move. But in the end, I still did move. So if my Tomoe moves twice, it's always the best thing out there, and that's just really nice. Because from there, it's just like super easy on the cleanup. There's always something stunned. It's always something super dead. But normally, this is the point where I get into more Lucians. But in this case, there was nothing to net 4 hits. So I went in more to creative hits. So I went for like a 202 Despair on the Robo, 201 Vio on the Okeanos, and then a pretty high Vio set on the Herny as well. And the Herny skill 3 actually does do max HP damage right now, the moment that there is a debuff, I think. Or is it on the buff? No, it's on the debuff for sure. Maybe it's on debuff and a buff. I'm not sure. But I was just like, I'll just go in with like a super kind of RTA kind of matchup. Really not super recommended to do in Siege. It's definitely not the most safe thing out there. But it does do a fair bit of that. Then the next hit is kind of similar style. I just went for it that 2 out of 3 units can always win this match. And let's just see how it goes from there. So, did get the strip on my 100 rest target over there. That's the only one that I had 100 rest from this whole team. So, landing that over there makes a little bit more sense. And then we just go for a lot of pushbacks, a lot of dots, a lot more dots over there. Just tear hard the living shit out of them. Also, if you do get a turn with this, you just do an insane amount of damage. That was a shield, and we still did like 27k on that right side. That's... Nora is just so insane the moment that there's a lot of debuffs. It just does so freaking much damage. And I normally don't really use this team at all, but I was just like trying to find a team where I could win like any kind of unit if it died in the first round. I could have expected to win after that, but definitely with the Nora. Nora is actually the MVP in this one. Nora just does a fair bit of damage with that skill 4. You have the provokes in there. Everything is like crazy. And now we finish off the siege with the unit of yesterday's video. We are once again back with this light Jin Kazama. In this case, yesterday I actually had a 194 set on it. This time around, I went for a 201 Vio set on it, so it's a little bit faster. I also went for like a 200 Vio set on this Layla. Or not 200 Vio, 200 Despair set on this Layla. So just to have a little bit of fun to see, it's like, okay, how many turns can we take? How many turns do we give to the Layla? How much is this Layla going to be super annoying? Because every time I learned every time I land anything, you just get so much attack bar. I was thinking about putting the Sahat, which is the Wind Bayek on the side of Lima. Would have been more fun, but also felt a little bit more unsafe. But I think in the end, I could have gotten away with it. But yeah, I think I'll try that for next time, because it actually does look like a pretty fun team. Like, the moment I start taking turns, they pretty much are all like CC. They're all pushed back. They all get dots. They all get like more debuffs. Everything is working on my side by additional damage artifacts. And yeah, this team is kind of fun. This is also definitely a team that I could see myself using RTA-ish. But yeah, kind of a fun thing out there. Well, the big issue in RTA, you have a few units that super hard counter that, no names, no bara. But yeah, that was a 10 out of 10 siege for that one right there. And the other one we did 9 out of 10. So in total, we had a 19 on 20 video for this sieges. Well, yeah, I guess that's that. If you want to see more Siege content, let me know in the comments. In Siege, I cannot really toy around as much as in GVG. In Siege, during like the mid-season, we don't care as much to win, but personally, I still kind of care. In GVG, I can just pretty much fool around whatever I want to do. So that's where I mostly do like the weird shit. But if you want to see me do anything interesting in Siege, or you want to know anything about builds or anything like that, let me know in the comments, or just any questions or whatever Siege related, or that you would like to see in a future Siege video. And I would like to thank you for your attention, and see you as always in the next one. Thanks for watching. If you would like to see more guides, join the Discord and check out the content tab for the guide video archive, which contains all of the guides that you might need. Hope to see you there.